Painful. How painful? My head hurts so badly. A gaudy and dazzling dream world filled with murmurs instantly shattered. The sound asleep Zhou Mingrui felt an abnormal throbbing pain in his head as though someone had ruthlessly lashed at him with a pole again and again. No, it was more like a sharp object pierced right through his temples followed by a twist. Ouch! In his stupor, Zhou Mingrui attempted to turn around, look up, and sit up. However, he was completely unable to move his limbs as though he had lost control over his body. From the looks of it, I'm still not awake. I'm still in a dream. Who knows, perhaps the next scene will be of me thinking I'm already awake, but in fact, am actually still sleeping. Zhou Mingrui, who was not unfamiliar with similar encounters, tried his best to focus in order to escape the shackles placed upon him by the darkness and confusion. However, while still in his reverie, whatever will he could summon was ethereal like a fleeting fog. He found his thoughts difficult to control and introspect. No matter how much he tried, he still lost his focus as random thoughts surfaced in his mind. Why would I suddenly have such an excruciating headache in the middle of the night? And it's really painful. Could it be something like a cerebral hemorrhage? F***K, don't tell me I'm going to die young? I need to wake up. Now. Why doesn't it seem to hurt as much as before? But why does it still feel like a blunt knife is slicing through my brains? From the looks of it, sleep is impossible. How am I to show up for work tomorrow? Why am I still thinking about work? This is some authentic headache. Of course I have to take time off. I don't have to worry about my manager's grumblings. Hey, putting it that way, it doesn't seem too bad. Hehe, I can end up getting some spare time for myself. Throbbing pain inundated Zhou Mingrui, allowing him to slowly accumulate immaterial strength until he was finally able to move his back and open his eyes. He finally broke free from his reverie. His vision first blurred before it was screened by a faint crimson red. All he could see was a study desk made of burly wood in front of him. Right in the middle was an open notebook with coarse, yellow pages. The title was eye-catchingly written with strange, deep black lettering. To the left of the notebook was a stack of neatly arranged books, numbering about 8. The wall on their right was inset with grayish-white pipes with wall lamps connected to them. The lamp had a classical Western style to it. It was about half the size of an adult's head with an inner layer of transparent glass and an exterior grid with black metal. Diagonally beneath the lamp was a black ink bottle shrouded in a pale red glow. Its embossed surface formed a blurry angel pattern. In front of the ink bottle and to the right of the notebook sat a dark-colored pen with a fully circular body. Its tip shimmered with a faint glint while its cap rested right beside a brass revolver. A gun? A revolver? Zhou Mingrui was completely taken aback. The things laid before him were alien to him. It looked nothing like his room. While feeling shocked and confused, he discovered that the desk, notebook, ink bottle, and revolver were covered in a layer of crimson veil, a result of the light shining from the window. Subconsciously, he looked up and shifted his gaze up bit by bit. In midair, a crimson moon hung high above the backdrop of a black velvet curtain glowing in silence. This, Zhou Mingrui felt inexplicably horrified as he stood up abruptly. However, before his feet fully straightened, his brain protested with throbbing pain. It made him temporarily lose his strength as he fell uncontrollably. His buttocks slammed heavily onto the burly wood chair. Pa! The pain did little. Zhou Mingrui stood up again by propping himself up. He turned around in a fluster as he began to size up the environment he was in. The room was not very large, with a brown door on each side of the room. Close to an opposite wall was a low wooden bed. Between the bed and the left door was a cabinet. Its 2 doors were swung open and beneath it were 5 drawers. To the side of the cabinet there was the same grayish-white pipe on the wall at the height of a person. However, it was connected to a strange mechanical device with exposed gears and bearings in several spots. Items resembling coal stoves sat in the right corner of the room near the table, along with soup pots, iron pots, and other kitchen utensils. Across the right door was a dressing mirror with 2 cracks. Its bottom was made of wood and the patterns were simple and plain. With a sweep of his gaze, Zhou Mingrui noticed himself in the mirror, the present him. Black hair, brown pupils, a linen shirt, thinly built, average-looking features and a rather deep outline. This, Zhou Mingrui immediately drew a gasp as many helpless and confused guesses surfaced in his mind. The revolver in ancient European style and the crimson moon that looked different from Earth's moon could only mean one thing. See, could I have transmigrated? Zhou Mingrui widened his mouth slightly. He had grown up reading web novels and had often fantasized over such scenes. However, he momentarily found it hard to accept the situation when he found himself in one. This was probably what it meant to love a fantasy one? In a minute, Zhou Mingrui had already cursed himself while trying to make the best out of his adverse situation. If not for the still throbbing headache that made his thoughts high-strung but clear, he would have definitely suspected that he was dreaming. Calm down, calm down, calm down. After taking a few deep breaths, Zhou Mingrui worked hard to stop panicking. At that moment, as his mind and body calmed down, memories began flooding him as they slowly appeared in his mind. Klein Moretti, a citizen of the northern continent's lone kingdom, Awa County, city of Tianjin. He is also a recent graduate from the Department of History at Koei University. His father was a sergeant of the Royal Army who had sacrificed himself during a colonial conflict with the southern continent. The bereavement allowance gave Klein the opportunity to study at a private language school and laid the foundation for his admission into university. His mother was a devotee of the Evernight goddess. She passed away the year Klein passed the entrance examinations to Koei University. He also had an elder brother and a younger sister. They stayed in a two-bedroom apartment together. Their family was not wealthy, and its situation could even be described as somewhat wanting. At present, the family was supported solely by the elder brother who worked at an import and export company as a clerk. As a history graduate, Klein grasped knowledge of the ancient Faesak language, deemed the origin of all languages in the northern continent, as well as the Hermes language, which often appeared in ancient mausoleums, as well as text regarding sacrificial and praying rituals. Hermes language? Zhou Mingrui's mind stirred as he reached out to rub his throbbing temples. He cast his gaze toward the table at the open notebook. He noticed that the text on the yellowed paper turned from strange to alien before turning from alien to something familiar. It then turned into something readable. It was text written in Hermes language. The dark ink wrote the following. "Everyone will die, including me." Hiss. Zhou Mingrui felt inexplicably horrified. He instinctively leaned back in an attempt to widen the distance between him and the notebook as well as the text on it. Being very weak, he nearly fell down but managed to extend his hands in a fluster to hold onto the edge of the table. He felt that the surrounding air was turbulent, as though there were faint murmurings resounding in it. The feeling was akin to hearing horror stories being recounted by elders when he was young. He shook his head, believing that everything was an illusion. Zhou Mingrui found his balance and shifted his gaze from the notebook as he heaved for breath. This time, his gaze landed on the shimmering brass revolver. He suddenly had a question arise in him. With Klein's family situation, how can they have the money or means to buy a revolver? Zhou Mingrui could not help but frown. While in deep thought, he suddenly discovered a red handprint to the side of the table. Its color was deeper than the moonlight and much thicker than the veil. It was a bloody handprint. A bloody handprint? Zhou Mingrui subconsciously flipped his right hand that had been holding the edge of the table. Looking down, he saw that his palm and fingers were covered in blood. At the same time, the throbbing pain in his head continued. Although it had weakened a little, it continued incessantly. Did I smash my head open? Zhou Mingrui guessed as he turned around and walked towards a cracked dressing mirror. A few steps later, a black-haired figure of medium build and brown eyes appeared clearly in front of him. The person had a distinct scholarly air to him. Is this the present me? Klein Moretti? Zhou Mingrui was stunned momentarily. Since there was insufficient lighting at night, he failed to see something clearly. He continued forward until he was just a step short from colliding with the mirror. Using the crimson veil-like moonlight as illumination, he turned his head and examined the corner of his forehead. A clear reflection appeared in the mirror. His temple had a grotesque wound with burn marks along its periphery. Blood stained the wound's surroundings and there were grayish-white brain juices squirming slowly within. Tap, tap, tap. Zhou Mingrui reeled back in fear at the sight that greeted him. It was as though the person in the dressing mirror was not himself, but a desiccated corpse. How could a person with such grievous wounds be still alive? He turned his head in disbelief again and checked the other side. Even though he was a distance away and the lighting was poor, he could still see the penetrating wound and dark red bloodstains. Zhou Mingrui drew a deep breath as he tried hard to calm himself. He reached out to press his left chest and sensed his racing heart that exuded immense vitality. He then touched his exposed skin. Beneath the slight coldness was flowing warmth. When he squatted down and after verifying that his knees could bend, Zhou Mingrui stood up again and calmed down. "What's happening?" he muttered with a frown. He planned to inspect his head injury seriously once more. He took 2 steps forward and suddenly paused. The moonlight of the sanguine moon was relatively dark, so it was insufficient for his serious inspection. A memory fragment triggered as Zhou Mingrui turned his head to look at the grayish-white pipes and the metallic grid lamp on the wall right beside. The study desk. This was the most common gas lamp of the times. Its flame was stable and its illumination capabilities were excellent. With Klein Moretti's family situation, even a kerosene lamp was a dream, much less a gas lamp. Using candles was most apt for their standing and stature. However, back when he burned the midnight oil 4 years ago to be admitted into Koei University, his elder brother, Benson, felt that it was an important matter which their family's future depended upon. Therefore, he insisted on creating conducive studying conditions for Klein even if it meant taking on debt. Of course, Benson, who was literate and had worked for several years, was not a rash person who did not think of the consequences. He had quite some tricks up his sleeve. He reasoned with the landlord to raise the apartment's standards by installing gas pipes to improve the likelihood of rentals in the future. The landlord was convinced and provided the money to complete the basic modifications. Then, using the convenience of working at an import and export company, he purchased a brand new gas lamp which was nearly a cost price. In the end, all he needed was to use his savings and did not need to borrow money. After the memory fragment flashed past his mind, Zhou Mingrui came to the desk where he turned the pipe's valve and began twisting the gas lamp's switch. With a sputtering sound, a spark sounded from friction. Light did not descend upon Zhou Mingrui as he had expected. He twisted the switch a few more times, but all the gas lamp did was sputter and remain dark. Retracting his hand and pressing on his left temple, Zhou Mingrui sought for the reason by rummaging through his memory fragments. A few seconds later, he turned around and walked toward the door. He arrived at the machine installation, which was similarly inset into the wall and had grayish-white pipes connected to it. This was a gas meter. After seeing the exposed gears and bearings, Zhou Mingrui took out a coin from his trousers pocket. It was dark yellow in color and had a bronze shimmer to it. The front of the coin was engraved with a portrait of a crown-wearing man, and there was a 1 on a clump of wheat on the back. Zhou Mingrui knew that this was the most basic currency of the Lone Kingdom. It was called a copper penny. 1 penny's purchasing power was roughly 3 to 4 yuan before his transmigration. Such coins had other denominations such as the 5 pence, a half-pence, and a quarter-pence. Despite the 3 types, the denominations were not in small enough units. In everyday life, one had to buy several different things just to spend a single coin from time to time. After flipping the coin, which was only minted and circulated after King George III ascended to the throne, a few times, Zhou Mingrui inserted it into the gas meter's thin vertical mouth. Clink, clang. After the penny fell to the bottom of the meter, the sound of grinding gears sounded immediately, producing a short but melodious mechanical rhythm. Zhou Mingrui stared at the meter for a few seconds before returning to the burly wood desk. He then reached out to twist the gas lamp switch. After some sputtering, there was a sharp sound. A fire plume ignited and rapidly grew. Bright light first occupied the internals of the wall lamp before penetrating the transparent glass, blanketing the room with a warm glow. The darkness quickly receded as the crimson retreated out the window. Zhou Mingrui felt at ease for a baffling reason as he quickly came in front of the dressing mirror. This time, he seriously inspected his temple and did not miss a single detail. After a few rounds of inspection, he realized that apart from the original blood stain, liquid was no longer flowing out of the grotesque wound. It appeared like it had received the best hemostasis and bandaging. As for the slowly squirming grayish-white brain and the discernible growth of flesh and blood around the wound, it meant that the wound might take 30 to 40 minutes or maybe even 2 to 3 hours before it would only leave a light scar. The restorative effects that transmigration brings? Zhou Mingrui curled up the right corner of his mouth as he muttered silently. Following that, he let out a long sigh. Regardless, he was still alive. After settling his mind, he pulled open a drawer and took out a tiny piece of soap. He took one of the old and tattered towels hanging by the side of the cupboard and opened the door. He then walked to the public bathroom, which was shared by the tenants on the second floor. Yes, I should clean up the bloodstains on my head or I'll keep looking like a crime scene. It's fine scaring myself, but if I were to scare my sister, Melissa, when she gets up early in the morning tomorrow, it would be quite problematic. The corridor outside was pitch black. Silhouettes were barely accentuated by the crimson moonlight from the window at the end of the corridor. They looked like a pair of monster eyes that silently observed the living late into the night. Zhou Mingrui lightened his footsteps as he walked towards the communal bathroom with a shuddering fear. When he entered, there was even more moonlight, allowing him to see everything clearly. Zhou Mingrui stood in front of a wash basin and turned the tap's knob. Upon hearing the gushing sound of water, he suddenly recalled his landlord, Mr. Frankie, as water was included in the rent. The short and thin gentleman who wore a top hat, a vest, and a black suit always inspected the bathroom actively to take note of any sounds of flowing water. If the water gushed too loudly, Mr. Frankie would ignore all of his gentlemanly traits by flailing his walking stick and striking the bathroom's door, shouting things like "darn thief. Wastage is a shameless matter. I'll remember you if I see this happen another time. Scram along with your filthy luggage, mark my words, this is the most value-for-money apartment in Tianjin City. You will not find a more kindly landlord anywhere else." Putting away those thoughts, Zhou Mingrui used a moist towel to clean the bloodstains from his face again and again. After checking himself using the rundown mirror in the bathroom and verifying that all that was left were a hideous wound and a pale face, did Zhou Mingrui relax. Then he took off his linen shirt and used a bar of soap to wash away the bloodstains. At that moment, he knitted his brows and recalled of a possible problem. The wound was too exaggerated and there was too much blood. Apart from his body, his room likely still had signs of his injury. After Zhou Mingrui was done with his linen shirt a few minutes later, he briskly returned to his apartment with a moist towel. He first wiped the blood handprint on the desk and then, using the gas lamp's illumination, sought out spots which he missed out. He immediately discovered that quite a substantial amount of blood had splattered onto the floor beneath the desk. And there was a yellow bullet to the left side of the wall. Releasing a round with a revolver pointed at the temple? After mixing and matching the clues from before, Zhou Mingrui had a rough idea how Klein had died. He was in no hurry to verify his guess. Instead, he seriously wiped away the bloodstains and cleaned up the scene. Following that, he took the bullet and returned to the side of his desk. He opened the revolver's cylinder and poured out the rounds inside. A total of 5 rounds and a cartridge shell all had a brass luster to them. Indeed. Zhou Mingrui looked at the empty cartridge shell in front of him and stuffed the rounds back into the cylinder while nodding. He shifted his gaze to the left and it landed on the notebook's words. "Everyone will die, including me." Following that, even more questions arose in him. Where did the gun come from? Was it suicide or a fake suicide? What kind of trouble could a history graduate of humble origins get himself into? Why would such a suicide method only leave behind so little blood? Was it because I transmigrated in a timely manner and it came with healing benefits? After pondering for a moment, Zhou Mingrui changed into another linen shirt. He sat on the chair and began pondering over more important matters. Klein's experience was still not something he needed to concern himself with. The true problem was to figure out the reason for his transmigration and if he could return. His parents, relatives, best buddies, and friends. the fascinating world of the internet and all sorts of delicious delicacies. These were reasons that prompted his desire to return. Click. 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 Zhou Mingrui's right hand was subconsciously pulling out the revolver's cylinder and slamming it back into place again and again. Yeah, there has not been much difference for me between this period of time and the past. I was just a little unlucky, but why would I transmigrate for no baffling reason? Bad luck. Yes, I tried a luck enhancement ritual before dinner today. A thought flashed in Zhou Mingrui's mind, illuminating the memories which were concealed by a fog of confusion. As a qualified keyboard politician, keyboard historian, keyboard economist, keyboard biologist, and keyboard folklorist, he had always deemed himself as knowing something of everything. Of course, his best buddy would often mock him as only knowing a little of everything. And one of them was Chinese divination. When he visited his hometown last year, he had discovered a thread-bound book titled Quintessential Divination and Arcane Arts of the Qin and Han Dynasty at an old bookstore. It looked pretty interesting and could aid him in posturing on the internet, so he bought it. Unfortunately, his interest was short-lived. The vertical script it used made the reading experience horrible. All he did was flip through the beginning pages before he threw it into a corner. He had experienced a spate of bad luck in the past month. Losing his cell phone, customers running away after cheating him, and mistakes at work. Only then did he suddenly recall the luck enhancement ritual written at the beginning of Quintessential Divination and Arcane Arts. Furthermore, the requirements were extremely simple without any basic foundation requirements. All he needed was to get 4 portions of the staple food in his area and place them in the 4 corners of his room. They could be placed on furniture such as tables and cupboards. Then, standing in the middle of the room, he had to take 4 steps in a counterclockwise fashion to make a square. The first step required him to sincerely chant, "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth." The second step was to silently chant, "Blessings stem from the Sky Lord of heaven and earth." The third step was, "Blessings stem from the exalted Darch of heaven and earth." And the fourth step was, "Blessings stem from the celestial worthy of heaven and earth." After the 4 steps were taken, he needed to close his eyes and wait 5 minutes in his original spot. Only then would the ritual be considered complete. Since it did not cost him any money, he found the book, followed what was stipulated, and did it before dinner. However, nothing happened back then. Who would have guessed that he would actually transmigrate in the middle of the night? Transmigration. There is a distinct possibility that it's due to that luck enhancement ritual. Yes, I should give it a try here tomorrow. If it's really because of that, I stand a chance of transmigrating back. Zhou Mingrui stopped flicking the revolver's cylinder and suddenly sat straight up. Regardless, he had to give it a try. He had to attempt a Hail Mary.